Hello mech warriors and welcome back to the Mech Lab. In the past, I have expressed my dislike for spending a lot of battle value on a single unit. And the reason for this is because mechs are very vulnerable. If you get shot in the head with a Gauss rifle or even just an inner sphere PPC, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to lose your mech entirely. In addition, any head hit can knock a pilot unconscious, making them extremely vulnerable since they will be immobile and can just get dogpiled by enemy units and kicked into scrap in the following round. In addition, through armor criticals are extremely dangerous. At any moment, you could be through armor critical in the center torso and have your gyro knocked out, or even get a triple engine crit and have your mech knocked out in the first round of combat by a single long-range weapon. It could even be a single AC2 shot. But what if I told you there were some mechs out there that were much more resilient to these kinds of one-hit KO attacks that expensive mechs sometimes fall victim to? Today we'll be looking at all the types of gear that can make your mech almost immovable on the battlefield. If you want a nearly unkillable brick, this is the video for you. First off, we're gonna look at Hardened Armor. I've pulled up the Madcat Mark II here in Mega Mech Lab to demonstrate a few things. First of all, Hardened Armor gives half the number of armor points that standard armor does. If we look at this here, we can see that with half a ton, you get 8 points of standard armor, but then if we swap that to hardened, it's only increasing by 4 pips per half ton. However, mechs with hardened armor take half damage from any attack on their armor. So this Madcat Mark II, in its original configuration, this Madcat Mark II has 40 armor on the arms, 44 on the torsos, 60 on the CT, 18 armor on the head, and that's the really big one because that makes you all but immune to getting headshot by a Gauss rifle. In addition to being more armored and less vulnerable to headshots, hardened armor also makes through armor criticals much less likely. Normally when you roll a through armor critical, you need an 8 or better to make that critical go through. With hardened armor, you need a 10. Now, hardened armor does come with some downsides. You suffer a +1 to all PSRs, which is pretty bad. It does mean that you are easier to knock over, and you also suffer 1 to your running movement speed. Another thing to note is that because hardened armor is providing half the amount of pips, you need way more of it to get full coverage. So if we max out the armor here on a 90 tonner, we're looking at 35 tons dedicated to just armor. Now, I really like armor. I think armor is a great investment, but this might be a little bit much. So if we're trying to maximize our hardened armor effectiveness, you need to counteract the penalty to PSRs. And one way to do that is by taking a quad mech. Quad mechs are difficult to knock over because they have 4 legs. This has 323 hardened armor, meaning that it's nearly 650 points of armor that you have to chew through. That is ludicrously hard to kill. And I don't know about you, but doing 64 damage to a torso is a little bit excessive. So this is a unit that you're probably just gonna completely ignore because trying to kill it is nearly impossible. And it's not very fast, so it can't really get on top of you very easily. But if it does have a lot of pulse lasers and a targeting computer that it can use to really give you a bad time. But if there is a slightly faster sniper unit, say like the Thunder Fox, for example, that is also rocking like 400 armor basically with a clan ERPPC and a targeting computer, this is something that you might have to actually deal with because this is going to be slamming you with an ERPPC at range, and it has pretty reasonable mobility. However, this is still extremely expensive. 2,500 battle value is a lot to pay for a mech with essentially 1 gun. So we're seeing the downside of hardened armor is that it just costs way too much tonnage to make a super tanky mech like this. This is one of my favorite hardened armor units, the Hammerhead. It's a little 45-ton clan mech, has decent movement at 6'8", so it can move around the battlefield reasonably well. And instead of being a quad mech to counteract the PSR penalty, it has actuator enhancement systems in the legs, which actually make it so that this is better at not falling down than a mech without hardened armor. Now, the sacrifice here is that it doesn't actually have that much hardened armor, but it's still armored like a heavy mech. We're talking 240 points points of armor here. That is insane. That's like a Timberwolf. And it's faster than a Timberwolf, which means that it's actually more survivable. Of course, the trade-off here being it doesn't nearly have the weapons that a Timberwolf would, but if you want a mech that's really good at going up and kicking people with decent mobility, great durability, and a good weapon complement, I mean, a Clan Large Pulse Laser is never going to go amiss. I think the Hammerhead is a solid unit. I definitely considered it in my last tournament list. Next, let's talk about a type of structure that will make your mech much more durable. We have here the Mastodon. This is the A variant, and it has reinforced structure. What reinforced structure does is it makes your mech take half damage to their structure, similar to Hardened Armor, meaning that this essentially has 60 center torso structure that you have to chew through, in addition to the 50 armor on the front. And it also causes a -1 to any critical hit check. So it's not quite as good at preventing through armor criticals as Hardened Armor is, but it keeps working after the armor is removed. And what this actually does is it makes your unit completely immune to having limbs blown off, which is pretty incredibly good. The max that they can roll on a critical hit check is an 11 because it causes a -1. Enemies need to roll a 9 instead of an 8 just to get any critical at all. And of course, the Mastodon A has disgusting weapons, 3 large pulse lasers, a Gauss rifle, and an LRM-15. It doesn't quite have the heat sinking to fire all of those, but it's not really that needed when you can just turn off the LRMs 1 turn out of 4 or something like that, and then just keep firing. This is a slow unit. It's not going to go anywhere. It has range 14. It just needs to find a sniper's perch and blast away. Now, reinforced structure has another benefit over Hardened Armor, and that is that it doesn't cause any kind of PSR penalties, and it doesn't cause any kind of movement speed debuff, and it's not that heavy. It costs 20% of a mech's overall weight, which compared to standard internal structure is a lot. That's 9.5 tons, but it's not nearly as much as maxing out your Hardened Armor would be. On this 95-ton assault mech, we essentially spend 9.5 extra tons, since standard structure costs 10% of your mech's internal structure. When we compare it to Endosteel, we do see a bit of a difference, but due to its ability to absorb critical hits really well and greatly increase your mech's overall durability, I actually like reinforced structure better than Hardened Armor. However, it does have a big downside. It doesn't make you immune to Gauss rifles hitting your head. With double the internal structure, we're talking about 6 points plus 9, that's 15. A Gauss rifle or Clan ERPPC can still headcap you, so it doesn't remove the greatest weakness that a mech has, but it does make you much more resilient against through armor criticals and even just criticals once your armor is stripped off. One of the big things that tends to kill assault mechs is light mechs getting behind you and blowing off your back armor and getting into your internals. This mech doesn't really care about that as much. And on top of all of that, it doesn't actually end up costing that much more battle value. Here's a fun unit, the Rhino. Reinforced structure makes it pretty tough. Overall great armor, nearly maxed on a 50-tonner. Whole bunch of lasers. I mean, these aren't the best places to put lasers in my opinion, in the legs, but this mech is all about the ramming. Obviously, it has spikes and a ram plate and mask, so this thing's job is to smash into enemies and do lots of damage to them. And the Rhino can definitely do that. At over 2,000 battle value, it does get a little bit expensive, but you have to remember that this does have essentially 5 large lasers strapped to it and an insane ability to both take damage with all of that reinforced structure and dish out insane charge damage. Here's a mech I like quite a lot. It's an upgraded Mongoose. We have a supercharger to let this thing run 16, very nippy. Reinforced structure means that it has as much structure on its legs as it does armor. 24 damage to take a leg off of a Mongoose is absolutely ridiculous. You have to hit it with 2 Clan Large Pulse lasers and then follow up with additional hits in order to remove this thing's legs. And we've got Inner Sphere ER lasers and a Bloodhound active probe. Really, really good scouting unit overall. Decent damage, solid armor, and the reinforced structure makes it super tough. The Grizzly 3, a heavy mech with some lovely reinforced structure. Are you going to be able to do 57 damage to its legs to knock those legs off? That's a pretty tall order, my friend. Great weaponry. We've got a plasma rifle, as well as an Artemis 5 equipped LRM-10, ER large laser, ER medium laser, and ER small laser. These are all going to do a lot of great long range damage. Now, it's a little light on heat sinks, but basically you swap out the ER large laser for the plasma rifle once you get in close. Everything except the LRM is linked to a targeting computer, but the LRM has that Artemis 5 FCS, so as long as your enemy does not have ECM, this is going to be an extremely hard-hitting, very accurate accurate unit. At 2300 battle value, it is rather expensive, but we're talking about expensive mechs here that are still really good because they are so durable. Now, we can't talk about mechs with reinforced structure without mentioning the Rime Otter. This is an incredibly powerful unit. 5813 with mask and supercharger means that this can absolutely book it towards or away from an objective whenever you need it to. And LB10X is a great mid-range, flexible weapon. A couple of improved heavy lasers in order to punch some holes at close range, and 8 light machine guns for some crit seeking up close. Case 2, meaning that it will not explode if the ammo goes up, which is fantastic. I will note that the LBX ammo is not protected by case, but it is protected by 18 internal structure on the arms, meaning that, yeah, it might explode and deal some damage, but these arms are gonna absorb a lot of that, and it's much less likely that the ammo will get crit anyways, especially because that arm is basically completely full with an LB10X itself. And this one is actually pretty reasonably costed. So this is a very durable backstabber slash heavy cavalry mech. Overall, love the Rime Otter. There's other versions of the Rime Otter that are also pretty good, but I can't cover every single mech that's great or else we'll be here all day. Next on the list of things that will make your mech super durable is Ferro Lamalore armor. What this does is it reduces damage that you take by 1 point for every 5 points of damage that a weapon deals. So if you get hit by an AC 20, instead of taking 20 damage, you only take 16. Standard armor gives 8 pips of armor per half ton, whereas Ferro Lamalore gives 7, so it's nearly as good. And if we're talking ton for ton, there's no question that Ferro Lamalore is better than Hardened Armor. It also has a really cool ability because it reduces damage by 1. It makes you essentially immune to LBX pellets or silver bullet Gauss rifles, and it reduces the damage that SRMs deal by 50%, which is insanely valuable if you're going up against someone who's trying to fish for head crits with like a bunch of streak SRM spam or something like that. So the calculation that you should be looking at is that every 5 points of armor that you have 1 extra point of armor. So this charger essentially has 29 armor on the arms and about 28 on the torsos, along with 12 on the rear and a little over 40 on the legs. Now there's 2 Charger Cs in the game, so don't get confused. This is the Charger C with all the crazy fancy clan tech. Again, this is another unit with mask and supercharger. So along with the Ferro Lamalore armor, it's pretty much designed to just charge enemies and annihilate them. It does have some pretty good weapons though. Improved heavy medium lasers deal 10 points each, and it can fire all of these without overheating while running. That's pretty impressive firepower, especially because it also has a targeting computer. And on top of that, it has an active probe and Angel ECM, so it's very well protected from enemy E-War and can project its own E-War onto enemy units. It's a great objective grabber with 13 total speed once it kicks in both the mask and supercharger, and it's very durable with nearly maxed Ferro Lamalore armor. So I really like the Charger C a lot, and I like Ferro Lamalore armor a lot. It has some really good applications. If your armor is opened up and someone tries to shoot you with LBX pellets, there's a pretty good chance that they're gonna hit a bunch of spots that have armor on them still and just do absolutely nothing. Now, Ferro Lamalore on its own still won't make you immune to a Gauss rifle to the head, unfortunately. So still, we have Hardened Armor is the only thing that makes you immune to headshots. But Ferro Lamalore does make you a lot more durable against many small hits like LRMs, ATMs, medium laser spam, etc. Looking at some more Ferro Lamalore mechs that I like quite a bit, we've got the Vulture Mark IV-A. This thing has LRM spam, a large pulse laser, and an Ultra AC-10 for some big damage, 2 ER small lasers for some good damage at close range, and maxed out Ferro Lamalore on a 60-ton 5.8 mover. It's a great cavalry mech. It is a tad expensive, but it's very hard to bring down and can fight at all ranges, which makes it a big threat. The C variant of the same mech is more built for close-up fighting, but it does have a Gauss rifle with a targeting computer, so it's still pretty deadly at that long range. And then it has a nice mid-range complement, 2 ER medium lasers, and an improved heavy large. Will fire at medium range at -1 to hit, so even at 4 gunnery, you have effectively 3 gunnery with this unit. It's expensive, 25, nearly 2600 battle value, but it's hard to bring down and has good damage at all ranges. The White Raven is one that I really wanted to bring in the most recent MRC tournament. I ended up taking it out of the list, but I do think that this is a good mech. 585 movement is premium. We have nearly 3000 battle value though. It's so expensive, it's hard to justify taking, but targeting computer on absolutely everything, 2 medium pulse lasers, bunch of ER smalls rifles and a couple ER large lasers for that close and long range fighting, and then 2 AP Gauss rifles in the left arm to support those medium pulse lasers at mid-range. Very accurate, very deadly, very hard to bring down. Okay, now this is a weird one. The Omni Marauder is a very strange mech. I didn't even know this existed until I went to make this video. It is a late era mech. 31-35 in the Dark Ages is when it becomes advanced instead of experimental. But this thing is disgustingly powerful. Ferro Lamalore makes it pretty durable, and the compact gyro means that this is very hard to knock down. Case 2 in the torsos makes this very hard to crit out as well, and we have ourselves a lovely heavy Gauss rifle and 2 plasma rifles. A light tag allows it to guide an LRM fire once it gets into close range, but really this is like a cool heat control unit that will open up big holes in enemy armor and absolutely thrash enemy tanks. Another clan mech, the Warcrow, the prime variant, nearly 3,000 battle value again, but over 200 Ferro Lamalore armor makes it very durable. 5/8 movement is very solid. Twin LRM-15s and an ER PPC for long range firepower is really strong, and then 2 medium pulse lasers and 2 ER medium lasers to back it up at close range. This is a super deadly heavy mech, and the PPC capacitor is kind of cool too, because you can turn off the PPC for a turn, charge it up, although you will have to fire a few less weapons, but then you can let it go for a 20-point ER PPC hit, which is absolutely devastating. I would say this is probably worse than the White Raven for around the same battle value, but it's still not bad. I think I like the Warcrow B a little bit better though. It's got that 5.85 movement back, it's a little bit cheaper, and we've got a large pulse laser and a Streak LRM-15 at long range, and then 2 medium pulse lasers and an ER medium laser, so nearly the same firepower at close range as the Warcrow Prime. Cheaper battle value, more flexible movement, although it does lack in that long range firepower a little bit. I'd usually rather have a large pulse laser than a clan ER PPC, even with that 20 damage hit from the PPC capacitor. And finally we have what might be one of the most durable mechs in the game, the Oion. The A variant is the cheapest at nearly 2,300 battle value, and it rocks a bunch of mech borders. Now these are very rarely seen weapons, but they are extremely good at critting out enemy vehicles or open enemy mechs, and it rocks a combination of reinforced structure and Ferro Lamalore armor. This mech also rocks the Nova combined electronic warfare system, which is basically like an ECM and Beagle probe stuck together. Now this is the cheapest version of the mech, so if you just want something that's gonna lob a little bit of long range fire and then support the rest of your long range fire support element at close range with improved heavy medium lasers, medium pulse laser, that's probably what I would use this for. And then we've got the Oion G variant if you just want some disgusting arrow 4 spam, just dropping 2 arrow 4s on people's heads. One downside to the Oion is the torso mounted cockpit. These are extremely bad, but with Ferro Lamalore and reinforced structure, taking out the torso or critting out the cockpit elements that are in the torsos is going to be extremely difficult. If you are wondering why they removed some of the armor from the head, that is why. It's a torso mounted cockpit. The head is basically completely useless. I do think that this would still be immune to being shot out by a Gauss rifle in a single hit, because this should reduce the Gauss rifle's damage to 12, and then we have 6 internal structure plus 8 armor is 14, so that should make this immune even if you had 1 less armor on here. So if you're making a custom mech and you want to make yourself immune to being headshot by a Gauss rifle slug, reinforced structure plus Ferro Lamalore armor is probably your best bet, unless you want to spend an absolutely astronomical amount of tonnage on making your mech nearly unkillable with hardened armor in addition to the reinforced. If you want by far just one of the best mechs in the game, the Oion D with 4 large pulse lasers and enough heat sinks to fire all of them well on the move is absolutely disgusting. This mech will definitely lose you friends. Then we've got the Oion B, which is really funny because it's great at long range. It can fire all 3 of these ER large lasers and only pick up movement heat, which is fantastic. And then it can swap to 2 improved heavy large lasers for some big 16 damage hits up close. And it also has a vibro blade, which is crazy. On an 85-ton mech, this will hit really hard. If you want a little bit of HAG action, we got a twin HAG 20 variant with an ER large laser to back that up at long range. And this one does have a targeting computer, so despite being 2700 battle value, I would say this one's probably worth it. It can absolutely destroy people at long range and will be a very durable anchor for your lance. And then if you're looking to spend even a little bit more battle value, it's arguable that the Oion C is the best of the bunch. With improved jump jets, it moves 355, which makes it actually pretty good on mountainous or forested terrain. It's still extremely durable, especially with 3 TMM from that 5 jump, and it has a bunch of pulse lasers with a targeting computer, so this is a completely disgusting ultra cheese mech. If you want to lose all of your friends, bring an Oion C and watch them be extremely frustrated as they can't outrun it because of the 5 jump, can't kill it due to all of the ridiculous amounts of durability that it has, and get ripped apart by it because of its extremely accurate pulse lasers. Did I miss any extremely durable units? Let me know in the comments, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe while you're there. Really helps out the channel. We just hit 2,700 subscribers, which is incredible. I'm so happy about that. Thank you so much, everyone. Head over to my live tab to see what I've been getting up to with streaming. I stream most nights at around 6:30 p.m. EST. I'd love to see you in the streams. If you're into tabletop games and strategy games, there's probably something in there for you. As always, thanks for watching, Mech Warriors, and you have yourselves a great day.